Hey there, Canadian wealth secret seekers. Today, we're going to dive into a real life wealth building dilemma from one of our listeners who happens to be from a dual income household looking to grow their real estate portfolio while balancing financial security. With a low interest rate mortgage coming up for renewal in the next couple of years, a growing family, and big decisions ahead, should they refinance? Should they leverage a HELOC or a home equity line of credit? Or should they sell and reinvest elsewhere? We'll break it all down, the cash flow, tax benefits, and long-term strategies to consider. So stick around as we provide some much needed clarity. All right, my friends, you are with Kyle again. My apologies to those who want to be hanging out with John here today. But today I wanted to address a question from someone who reached out on social media. If you're not following us on social media, head on over to your favorite social media platform and look for Canadian Wealth Secrets. We are at Invested Teacher. Sadly, our title of our podcast is way too long in order to create a handle on most social media platforms. So that's what you've got for now. But if you search for Canadian Wealth Secrets, you'll find us. This one's from Instagram. And they reach out. This is a East Coaster here, says, new listener and newly awakened to begin my journey of wealth building with my new family. I have what I feel to be a very complex opportunity that I want to take full advantage of, and looking for you guys as the hopeful clarity providers. Amazing that you're reaching out and entrusting us to at least provide some perspectives, not advice, but perspectives. Some backgrounds here. He and his wife have good jobs. They pay in the $110,000 to $120,000 range. It sounds like both of them are doing that, so that's a nice healthy income. They both have government pensions. She likes her job and will work it forever, whereas he dislikes his and wants to build a portfolio or a business that would allow them to leave at some point. So there's definitely some, entrepreneurial spirit here, as well as this idea of growing a portfolio. They live in the eastern provinces. I'm not going to, hone in on which one. They purchased their primary residence for $330,000 in 2021. And they got a solid sub 2% fixed mortgage. So we're going to use 2% for this conversation here today. And it's valued now, the property is valued at $425,000. So some nice appreciation there, despite, the market's maybe softening over the last couple of years there. The remaining mortgage is at $290,000 and it renews in November 2026. That's about 18 months from now. Didn't do the math on that, by the way, but we're looking at a year and a half-ish or so down the road. Now, they're in a smaller house with the idea that they want to grow their family and they would like to grow their actual home with them, meaning they want to make sure as they're having kids, and it sounds like that time's now, that they want to sort of expand, which most people, what they do, they sell the property. There's no capital gain on that property. So it's a primary residence. They take that money, they roll it into the next property. And usually what they're trying to do is they're trying to, do a couple of things. They're trying to either, maybe restretch the amortization so that the payment stays lower. Maybe they keep the amortization the same and they're just ready to take on a higher payment, or any other aspect of that might be happening, right? So these are all really interesting perspectives to have. So ideally, though, they're looking and saying, they would like to potentially keep this home. And we'll talk a little bit about what that might look like. But they're saying, his gut's saying that it's telling him to do everything they can to keep the house as a rental, to build future wealth. So they seem confident that real estate's definitely going to be helpful here, but they don't want to jeopardize their future comfort and buffer if things take a turn for the worse. So right there, a question that I would have for them is like, what does that mean and what does that look like? And so on our end, can't really help you overcome that until we know what that means. Like, what does that actually look like? Like, if it takes a turn for the worse, are we worried about the market taking a turn and therefore like you're not comfortable sleeping at night, noting the property isn't worth what you thought it was worth? Is it a cash flow crunch? Is it a little bit of both? Like, what's going on there? And sounds like really, nobody wants to get in over their head. Now, they were talking about this. They're saying like, we could keep this property, refinance the property, the current home, pull equity out to use towards the new home. However, that new interest rate would eat up most of the cash flow on the property, and they'd lose their, less than 2% interest rate for, almost 2 more years, which makes it very close to break even. Taking out a HELOC is another option, which would allow you to keep the current rate for another year, but it also impacts cash flow as it adds another payment to your finances. So one thing that's worth mentioning right now, as we kind of dig into this scenario a little bit more, is that you are absolutely right. If you do a full refinance, the full refinance is going to be at a new and higher rate likely, right? So, somewhere around 5% ish is likely. Somewhere in there, you could probably do better. Some people are seeing like low fours right now on a fixed product. Some people are saying, hey, variable might be the way to go. Either way, you're going to be higher than 2%. So you're right. So trying to preserve that is one aspect of it. It's one part of the equation. The other aspect is trying to sort of think this through and figure out that, first off, if you want to buy a bigger home, that's like sort of a lifestyle move. And I've been there. We're in our home that, we had actually sold one of our investment properties when we had built this particular property. So totally get it. Probably wasn't the best move from an investment standpoint for me to have done that. However, emotionally at the time, I felt like that was the right move. So you're going to have to sort of balance these two things out as you try to make some of these decisions. But one thing I can tell you is that if we can hang on to that low rate as long as possible and maybe consider the home equity line of credit as an option in order to help with the down payment on this new primary residence, that could definitely be a good move on your part. That would keep this current property. You'd move into the other property that would then become the primary residence. So that residence from that date forward would be where you'd keep your quote unquote capital gain exemption from that property. So that's all great, all good stuff there. But now the real question is like, whether this is like the right move at all. So while it's convenient to keep a home and buy another like that, it makes it easy, right? I don't have to sell it. I don't have to lose money on the sale or the transaction. Like, these are other things to sort of keep in mind. Like, when you sell a property, you might have to sell it for more or for less than you're anticipating it's worth, right? Depending on the market, you're going to have to pay realtors and, all kinds of things like that. So keeping this home and renting that would be great if the numbers make sense. So let's look at this thing first. You're saying in this message, this particular individual saying it's worth, it's worth about $425. You could rent it at about $2,000 to $2,200 monthly. So I'm going to start with $2,000 a month. Let's just see if this thing is actually worth keeping as a rental property at all. One thing I can tell you though, is that oftentimes the homes that we live in and that we found to be like great as our home may or may not be the right fit or the best fit for a rental property. Why? We typically take care of our homes in a particular way. Well, many of us do. I can't speak for everyone. However, when someone moves in and it's a rental, oftentimes people tend to not seem to take care of things as nicely as maybe you may have done. So why I say that is that this property, depending on where it is and so forth, you may have what I'll call a little bit of a loss in terms of the neighborhood that it's in. So it might actually be better to sell the property and buy, a duplex or buy a multifamily property. Like, you might be able to get that dollar to stretch a little bit further. Now, what that might mean is that, the property itself might not be as nice as the one that you have now, but you also don't have to worry about tenants coming in and maybe them not treating the property as nicely as you might have liked in your mind. So those are some thoughts. But what I want to do is I want to take a look here, and I'm going to share my screen for those who are hanging out with us on YouTube. You can see up on the screen, I've got our property analyzer up here. And we're going to take a look at what's going on right now. Like, what we know today is that, your property is worth around $425. You've got about, I'd say about 30, just north of 30% in equity. So I'm going to have down payment as 32%. We have about 21 and a half years, I'm assuming, on the actual amortization of the mortgage, because you've been in this home for, about 3.5-ish years since you bought it. And therefore about 21 and a half years left, I'm assuming, unless you started with a different amortization schedule. With that, you've got about 290 left. I've got 289 here, close enough. So we're looking at this thing apples to apples. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to approximate some things. Things I don't know right now are the cost of property taxes where you live. I can go and look at an average and so forth. I went with $2,400 a year. Now, if it's $2,400 and it's less than that number, then that's a benefit, obviously. If it's more than that, then obviously these numbers are going to be off a little bit. The same, I picked the same for property insurance as well, $2,400. Again, I don't know exactly what this property is. I don't know the address, nothing here, but we're going to use this as a starting point. And I also included 10% for repairs and vacancy as just sort of a bit of a buffer number. So another $200 per month that has to be accounted for. Now, you had mentioned $2,000 to $2,200 as rent. I'm going to pick the lower of the two numbers just to be more conservative here. And what you're going to notice is that you got about $21 of positive cash flow here. Now, what that actually works out to, if we assume appreciation of about 3% per year, if we assume mortgage pay down according to the amortization schedule we had, like you can see here that, without appreciation, you got about 8.2% of return on investment here, which is great. I say great. It's not amazing for real estate by any means, but it's a good number. And when we include the appreciation, we're looking at about 17.6%. That's awesome. Your cap rate's at 4%. So it's pretty low, but again, fairly easy here. Maybe you like the property. Maybe you feel really good about owning this property. So not a bad thing at all. However, in a couple of years, when you go to renew this mortgage, we're going to look at this from a renewal perspective. So same property, same value, except let's pretend you get a rate of about 5.2%. And let's say you wanted to keep the 20-year amortization. So once your 5-year term is up, you'll have 20 years left on the amortization. All of a sudden, that's going to put you in a more of a cash crunch here. You're going to be down and cash flow negative about $447 per month. Now that might help you answer your question as to whether, is this something that we're willing to do? Now, when I look at the numbers with appreciation, you're looking at like a 10% return still, like not bad, but most real estate investors are looking for cash flow positive. Now, there's a number of things that we can modify here that will impact whether this is quote unquote worth it to you or not. And this other idea that I have is like, hey, maybe you stretch out the amortization again. This is a rental now. And therefore, there's no rush to sort of pay this thing down. I might go ahead and stretch it out to 25 years. And if I stretch it out to 25 years, what you're going to notice is that all of a sudden, your net cash flow is now kind of cut in half from negative 400-ish down to negative 241, which is still not ideal, but maybe manageable for you, right? Maybe you're feeling like that's okay. The other nuance is that most people are probably going to say, Kyle, fixed rates are actually going to be lower. And if I go to like, say, Rate Hub, for example, mortgage rates, like let's see what we got on a 5-year fixed. I see a 389 here on the screen. Now that's usually like, bottom of the barrel. I see 429. I see 424. A lot of these are featured. So like, what if we went to like 4.45 or something? We try to be conservative. 4.45 on the interest rate. And this is on the fixed side. It might be better to go variable by that point. We'll see. Time will tell. And all of a sudden now you're looking at you're only cash flow negative by $122 per month. Things are looking better for you. And you might be saying, wow, that's actually not that bad. Here's something else we haven't considered is that right now, this property technically has quite a bit of what we call equity in the home, but you are planning to use that equity for this new home purchase. So the big question you really have to ask yourself is, when I buy this new home, how comfortable am I going to be in this new home with those new mortgage payments? So until we really know exactly what you're setting yourself up for from this new home, if that's your major concern, then maybe the investment property may not be the best way to go. However, if we adjust some of these things and let's pretend, mortgage or property insurance is actually only like $1,500 a month, and let's say, you're only expecting like 7% repairs and vacancy, all of a sudden, and maybe it's $2,100 you get in rent instead of $2,000. All of a sudden, we're now at your cash flow of $106 per month. So you are net positive here. So a lot of this has to be thought about as you go into this. But I would say the big unknown that we don't have to help you along here is how comfortable are you with the new home that you're purchasing and the new financing terms that you're purchasing under. I would argue that the thing that's going to cash crunch you the most is probably going to be your new primary residence. Why? Because we tend to buy nicer homes. They tend to be a little bit more expensive. We tend to take out slightly bigger mortgages on them because we want to live a comfortable lifestyle. And if you want to do that, amazing. But that's probably what's going to be more of the cash flow crunch that you'll experience if you were to choose to keep this investment property. However, on the other hand, what you may choose to do is you may decide that maybe there's a better option. Maybe there's better investment opportunities out there that I can get. And maybe we let the dust settle on our new home purchase first with plans to pull out as much equity or keep as much of your own money out of this new primary residence so that you can buy the proper investment property that you're really after. Said another way, we don't want to keep this current primary residence just because it's convenient. We want to keep it because it's actually a good investment and you're feeling like it's something worth keeping versus putting into other investment buckets. The cash flow part is obviously a major concern, and you certainly don't want to be sleeping at night or not sleeping at night because you're wondering where the next bill is going to get paid from. So we've got a lot of things for us to consider here, both thinking of your cash flow with this new home that you're planning to purchase. What does that look like and sound like? And then how cash flow negative are you willing to go in order to keep this particular property? Or does it make more sense to actually sell this property and take investment dollars, commit to a certain amount that you plan to invest in real estate or otherwise, while still buying this new larger home that you'd like your family to grow in? Friends, we are encouraging you to reach out to us through social media or any other platform, including our website, by heading to CanadianWealthSecrets.com. We have a contact button there that we'd love to hear from you all about what's going on in your world and how we can help you along your wealth building journey. Remember, if you are unsure of where you are in the wealth building journey, you can head over to our Pathways assessment page over at CanadianWealthSecrets.com/pathways, and you can take our quick assessment in order to get next steps for you along your journey. Incorporated business owners, if you have yet to join our Incorporated Business Owners Masterclass, head on over to CanadianWealthSecrets.com/masterclass, and you can opt into that free online learning course. All right, my friends, until next time, we will see you later. And just as a reminder that this is not a podcast for investment advice, it is for entertainment purposes only. This content is for information only, and you should not construe any such information or material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. And just as a reminder that I am a fully life licensed and accident and sickness licensed insurance agent, as well as the VP of Corporate Wealth Management with the Pan Corp team, including corporate advisors and Pan Financial. So reach out to us for any of your insurance and leveraged insurance needs. Take care.